This talk is about variable fonts. It will take a bit more than 10 minutes, and these three people here on the screen, they are Underware, type design studio in Europe.
I'm Bas.
I'm Sami.
I'm Akim.
And just like many other designers, Underware is extremely enthusiastic about variable fonts. Right, guys?
Yeah, very, very enthusiastic.
Looking forward to this. Let's go for it.
I'm also very thrilled about the variable fonts.
Yes. Also, Akim is thrilled about the possibilities that variable fonts offer for dynamic type. And there are lots of new possibilities. However, Underware also believes that too soon and too quick, existing conventions are transported to new technologies without enough thought. So we should take care not to misconceive variable fonts, but carefully think how we want to express ourselves through text in the future, and how new technologies, like variable fonts, can help us to achieve that. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So variable fonts, everybody probably knows what these are. Before we had all these separate styles, we put them all in a single font file. That's a variable font. So let us go back to 2016 when this variable font technology was introduced. Variable fonts, they are officially called OpenType 1.8, and since 1.8, type designers have been using this technology to make really crazy letters, to make beautiful letters, to make surprising letters, and often, as you will see and hear people talking about variable fonts, you will see stuff like this, a showcase, and the largest amount of variable fonts you will see today, they consist, these beautiful letters, crazy letters, they consist out of a weight axis and additionally also a width axis. But interestingly, type designers have been designing fonts already with the weight and width axis for 25 years. It was only just not possible to distribute them in a more efficient way. So the designer doesn't have to change the process. The variable font technology only allows for a more efficient way to share all the types with the users, because all those various weights and widths are now included in a single file. So that's easy. And next to that, you will often hear that variable fonts finally have the return of the optical sizes, and they also cause a smaller font, a smaller file size. And however, it's interesting and fascinating, but at the same time, maybe it's just 1% of the potential of the variable font technology. So interestingly, this 1% slowly now becomes the convention. And for many users, a variable font already became a font with a weight slider. And there's this quote by Buckminster Fuller who says that 99% of who you are is invisible. In the same way, we would like to say that 99% of what variable fonts are is still invisible. But the good thing is, it can be explored. So before we reach a point where variable fonts are assumed to be those fonts which just expand in weight or width, let's try to give a different perspective on variable fonts, what this technology can be used for. And most importantly, it allows us to realize new ideas. And now we get sick already of this subterranean homesick blues effect in this PowerPoint keynote presentation. So let's remove that. And we will all agree that this PowerPoint or keynote was not made to recreate 50-year-old ideas. In the same way, variable fonts are not meant to recreate those old ideas. So let's think about those new ideas. What could be those invisible 99% of the potential of variable fonts? And we will now show 3 examples. The first showcase is Placato Play. Placato is a type family display font which we made a few months ago. And while designing Placato, we designed a static version together with a dynamic version. And while designing the outlines, we were designing the dynamics at the same time as we were designing the static version. So all the the whole design process of the font actually turned around different than normally, because the design of the dynamics is included in the font file and has been designed basically in the same way as you normally design your aesthetic outlines. And hopefully this gives users a different way to express themselves through text. So all these dynamics, what you see here, it's part of a variable font, and it can be controlled by the user. So the user can still change the speed or change the stroke width, or just control the font, the variable font, in the way they want. Another interesting project, I think, is FourFoundry. FourFoundry is a project by Lawrence Penny and Irene Vlaciu from 2019, and it's a Greek typeface, a variable font with 12 axes, and has a very large design space. And it can be used to create a fallback font which matches a Latin weight font which does not have any Greek version. So for example, if we just take this and then we choose Dolly, for example, Dolly does not have any Greek version. So normally if you have a Greek text, then you get an ugly fallback font, and FourFoundry now will analyze Dolly and look for a Greek font which has the same proportion and the same contrast as the Latin font has. So without this, it will probably look like this, like the fallback, the default, which is not as matching. This is better, although the difference is not that big. If you look at a different typeface, like Faki, which is a black letter, the difference is already much bigger between the standard fallback font and like this. This looks pretty ugly, the standard fallback font, and now it matches much more the proportions of the black letter, of the Latin font. So I think this is an interesting example of how variable font technology can be used to realize a new idea, a new project. And a third project we want to show here is Grammato, another project by ourselves. This maybe looks handwritten in first instance, we have all the bleeding effect, but it's still a variable font, so you can still select this text and copy and paste it just like you would do with any other typeface. But again, the whole dynamic of how this is written is included in the font. So if you have a Chinese text, for example, you could have a contextual menu in your operating system, and this would allow you to write this text. So you could have a write function. And especially with Chinese and Japanese, with Asian scripts, which are strongly based on calligraphy, this could be very useful. And this is not limited to a certain script or to a certain style. So you see here now a few different fonts which we have made this way. But again, it's important to realize that the entire dynamics is included in the font file itself. So if you want to see more examples of this, go to grammato.com. But I think all these three projects, they have in common that they are built on ideas which are only possible because of this variable font technology. And so instead of taking the old idea and just wrap them in a new technology, just develop a new idea which fits to this new technology. Meanwhile, we went from 1.8 to 1.9 since a few months, and this got known as the new color font format. And you have gradients and you have transparency, and we made a version of Placato which also uses this new color font, this new font format 1.9. So it gives us new possibilities for ourselves as well. And again, this whole color information is included inside the font file. You can still type with it, and in this editor you can also customize it exactly the way you want it, and then you have your own custom color font. But we should again also take a moment to reflect on what this really is, this 1.9. What does this new font format really mean? And if you look at how we designed fonts before, on the left you see the old Placato, and on the right you see Placato Color. You see before we only designed the outline, and inside there was just a color, just black. Now we also design the entire body. So before we only designed the boundary, and now we design the complete body of this area. And it can be used to display colors. So we put this color information there and use this color information to display colors. But you can also use this color information to display a three-dimensional landscape, for example. Or maybe it's not a three-dimensional landscape, but you use this color information as forces. And those forces, again, can be applied in a different way. So based on this, we recently made a haute couture collection, which you see here. But again, this OpenType 1.9 format, it's brand new, and it still requires much more thinking, and much more reflection, and much more experimenting to discover what it really is. And I'm pretty sure it's not just another color font format. It just needs more thought. So I think the question is, where are we heading to? And for example, if people will still use fonts in 100 years, and if so, how are those fonts different than those fonts which we use today? And if you look at the story of writing, you will see that for 5,000 years, people have been writing already by hand. There we are today. That's just one way of writing. There's another way of writing for more than 500 years, which is called typography. And then maybe meanwhile, there's a third way of writing arising, which we call chromatography. And the difference is that if you look at typography, that typography is the only version of this which is completely static. And before that, and also after that, now again, letters have become dynamic, which allows us to make new kind of writing. And probably if we have also new writing instruments, it offers us new ways to express ourselves through text. So in that way, maybe we're heading now to a writing 3.0. But for those who make and design letters, as well as those who use letters, I think I would like to ask, like, what do you really like to do with letters which you haven't been able to do? We need more discussion and more thinking and more reflection what these new technologies really mean and what new possibilities they offer for express ourselves through text. So maybe the question is not so much how to get there, but maybe we should first ask ourselves, like, how to get where? Where do we want to go? Thank you very much.